started in Detroit.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to London First United Methodist Church. I'm Dave Luckbrone. I'm the senior pastor here. And start with some housekeeping for our guests, and that is restrooms and drinking fountains. So if you need either of those, through those doors, and then you'll see through the parlor, it winds around down a hallway. And the men's restroom is at the end of that hallway. Just a little further at T's, and to the right, you'll see the drinking fountain in the women's restroom. So again, just down that way and go left, and you'll eventually get where you need to go. I do want to welcome you here, and it's glad to have you all here this evening, because the crime of human trafficking is pervasive. It's a problem worldwide. It's a problem here in Ohio. What we learn tonight will be sobering, but raising awareness really is a key to fighting such a monstrous crime. And I want to welcome our speakers tonight, and I should have gotten a bio. If not, I have them I can give to you of our speakers. Sandra Berchtold is with us tonight. She's retired from the FBI after over 21 years of service, still active with law enforcement and with the fight against human trafficking. Trooper Chad Lyons with the Highway Patrol for 23 years, serving in different capacities, currently with the investigative unit of the Highway Patrol. And with Trooper Lyons tonight is Staff Lieutenant Melanie Appleman, and we're glad to have her with us. She oversees criminal investigations with the Highway Patrol. And so I want to thank you for coming tonight and giving of your time to be with us. We're just very grateful that you're here, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I also want to thank our County Prosecutor, Nick Adkins, who introduced me or got me in touch with the folks that are going to be speaking tonight. So I'm grateful for that. And what I'm going to do is just turn it over to them and their speak, and then at the end of that, there'll be a time for question and answers. So thank you, and I'll let you go.
Good evening. My name is Chad Lyons. Like he said, I'm with the Ohio State Highway Patrol. I'm in our investigative section. It could also be called like our detective bureau, equivalent to like a local police department. I'm thrilled to be in front of civilian, regular people instead of a house full of other law enforcement. It's nice to talk to you folks in the community. Growing up, my dad always told me I had a face for radio. So some of you may get this, some of you may not, but either way, I'm happy to be here and talk to you guys. So we're state troopers, we're the Ohio State Highway Patrol. What does that have to do with human trafficking, right? We do a little bit more than write speeding tickets and seat belts and investigate crashes. So we do have specific units within our division. Ranges from our special response team, we have aviation, we have several helicopters, fixed wing aircraft, we have our investigative section, K9, so we have a multitude of specialized units in addition to the road units who work traffic safety. So what is our role in human trafficking as it pertains to the Highway Patrol? So us being with the Highway Patrol, we have jurisdictional restraints, okay? And what that means is we have jurisdiction on any public roadway, interstate, state-owned, leased properties. So we don't necessarily have direct jurisdiction on a home, on an apartment complex or something like that. So we rely a lot on our law enforcement partners, our city, local, county agencies, even federal agencies to work together to investigate these types of our cases. So a little bit more what we do. Obviously, we all know the Highway Patrol does traffic safety services, criminal investigations, emergency response, and executive protection. And the executive protection is like a unit that goes around with our governor, state reps, and so forth to keep them safe. So a little bit more what we do with the human trafficking side. There's a acronym ICAC. It's Internet Crimes Against Children, and that's a huge problem and issue that we're dealing with today. With social media being at its peak that it's ever been, and the technology today, we've really run into a problem with this, and we've created, we haven't, but the unit, the ICAC investigation, is really to fight those who try to harm children, either by soliciting images with them, trying to meet with them, and to harm them in any way possible. So just as a quick example of something that we've done here recently, a few of us have been selected to go be trained to, they call it to be a chatter, to chat with people on the internet who think that we're underage individuals, either male or female. And through that, we've come to success to actually meet up with people who think that they're meeting with an underage person. So we've done that a few times successfully, and it's kind of scary if you really think about how easy it is to do that. Within minutes, you could get on selected sites, websites, apps, cell phone apps, and get connected with somebody who's willing to drive 10 minutes or 10 hours to come meet you. And these are commercial truck drivers. These are just regular citizens. There's no boundaries to who they are. And if we have a night where we plan to do this task all evening, it's one car after another that comes in. It's good that the results are there, but it's also concerning, obviously. So we've already talked about that. There's some statistics there. 71,000 law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and other professionals have been trained. So obviously, if we're throwing those types of numbers at this, it's a problem for sure. Ohio ICAC is currently based in Cuyahoga County, and they are kind of the leadship to ICAC, and everybody that works around the state, either in Cincinnati, Columbus, Toledo, kind of falls under this group here, and they kind of steer the ship with the investigations. In this, as we expect, right, with time, things get worse, right, unfortunately. So those numbers are a little hard to see there, but it does start out in 2009, and the last statistic is 2023. And you can see the increase of cyber tips. Now, cyber tips, for those who don't know, anybody can create a cyber tip or report a cyber tip to ICAC. You can contact them, and so if you have something of concern or something on the internet that you're concerned with, or a niece or nephew, a grandchild, something that you think that they're involved with. Today, who's heard of Fortnite? Probably maybe some of the younger folks, yeah. So it's an online gaming console game that you can connect literally with anybody around the world. And I'm not saying that this is the only issue that we have with the gaming community. It's just one of the ones that are more predominant. So with that being said, if you know of anybody who does play, my son plays it, I hate it, but he plays it. But I do keep an eye on things because people will befriend you. They'll say that they'll lie and they'll say that they're 10, 12 years old, and you build trust and you build you communicate with somebody. Now all of a sudden you're wrapped up into something that they shouldn't be in, and that's obviously an issue. So what are we doing to help? In 2023 is really when we started getting into Ohio ICAC and becoming more of a predominant member. Currently, 12 troopers receive specialized training to conduct undercover online investigations. Several are scheduled to go again. And peer-to-peer file sharing, or they call it P2P. That is an incident where an individual has a file of, let's just say, of child pornography of some sort. And that individual will share that file on the internet to where other people can grab it on the internet and download it obtain it, and then they can share it again. That's peer-to-peer, so it's person-to-person sharing. And we have devices, other law enforcement agencies have the same devices that we can scrub the internet. And I'm not a techie guy, and I'll try to dumb it down as it was dumbed down to me so I could understand it. It's just when these files go through the internet, this machine can kind of go out and kind of, it's kind of like an apple sorter where it'll shoot out bad apples as they're coming down the assembly line, right? It's kind of like that. So when these files come through, millions of files come through, not all bad, but they'll pick out certain files that have child pornography or child sex abuse material. And through that, we can obtain who that person is through legal service. So it'll give us a brief little snippet of information, and then we can, through legal service, through a subpoena or warrant, we can actually go and find out who this person is that's sharing the file, and then investigate that case accordingly. Think that'll work? If we can get this to work, this is just a quick video of an online sex offense.
Get your hands up, turn the car off now. Turn it off. Take the keys out. Go on, keep your hands up.
So this video, just to give you a little bit of background real quick, this isn't a normal traffic stop. People don't approach you with these big shields for speeding, right? So these people in green, those are our special response team. It's kind of our equivalent to a SWAT. And this was a organized stop or incident where the investigators ourselves aren't going to do the takedown of the individual that we're seeking. We've got these people that are highly trained to go do that safely. So just to kind of clear that up.
Hold on, keep your hands up.
I do none. Don't worry.
Drop your phone. Keep your right hand on the steering wheel. All right, I'm gonna pull you out.
Yep.
You're good. Put your palms together like you're praying back there.
Turn it. There you go. Thank you.
Walk you back to one in custody.
Looks like maybe some of that got cut off. We can go to the next one. That was just, so that was an investigation that we had. I wish we had more of the video of it, of something that was organized prior to. It was something that we had set up for that individual to meet at a particular location and a time, and as a result, he was taken into custody for it. So here, this is another case in 2023 that we worked, a 15-year-old female from Ashtabula County. It is in the northeastern part of Ohio near Cleveland. Met on an online forum, and then the female went missing in October 2023, but was safely recovered a short time later after an investigation. So, human trafficking defined, it involves the use of force, fraud, coercion to exploit a person for profit. And down below that you'll see it says ORC, and it's got a number that's Ohio Revised Code 290532, and that's that's a public thing that you can look up. You can even just Google that, and it'll bring up specifically what the thresholds are and what the penalties are if it meets the criteria of human trafficking. So just some quick statistics here, 50 million victims worldwide, 150 billion in worldwide industry. That's a lot of money, right? 150 billion. Second largest criminal network in the world. And you know, this isn't anything new at all. This has been going on forever, if not hundreds of years in some fashion, right? It's just today with the technology that we have, we're able to recognize it a little quicker and to investigate. So how does it work? There's several different ways on how someone becomes trafficked, okay? Every story is different, every victim is different, they have their own story. So these are just a couple ways: luring, grooming, coercion and manipulation, exploitation, and recruitment. So these are all pretty self-explanatory, but the main thing is that these predators, these people that are looking to traffic these individuals, try to exploit them and to find out what it is that is a shortfall in their life, okay? Is it money? Is it emotional support or a lack of emotional support from their family? Is it something in school? Maybe they're being bullied. They don't have many friends. They're not accepted in social groups. Maybe they're being bullied online. So these individuals, these predators, try to identify these areas in these people's lives that are in trouble. And what do? They try to fill those voids. And that's how you become groomed and manipulated, right? Exploitation, especially for the younger individuals, a lot of times where somebody, and this kind of goes back to the whole Fortnite thing and the gaming systems. Somebody may ask a young child for a picture of their face. He may consider it, he may do it because it's innocent, right? This other 12-year-old boy wants a picture, or 12-year-old girl wants a picture of my face. Maybe a week or two goes on, now it's, hey, give me a picture of you in the bathroom in the mirror without your shirt on. They've become friends at this point, right? They feel comfortable with each other. Now, okay, it seems harmless, let's take that picture. So we can see where this goes, right, without going all the way. Eventually, it's a nude image of this person that gets sent to somebody who is not 12 years old, who is likely much older. Now they're going to use that image to, hey, if you don't do this for me, or if you don't meet me here, or if you don't do this or that, I'm going to send this picture to your school teacher, to your mom and dad, to your church, to all your friends. And as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, right, you're scared. And a lot of times that'll happen. And then that's how that all happens with the exploitation. And then recruitment, obviously the recruitment can be a little bit older, high school, college, but it's all the same. They try to identify the shortfalls in your life, and they try to fill those voids to get that friendship and that trust. Now, who are the trackers? We kind of talked about who the victims are, right? Children, young teenagers, and by all means, you can be an adult and be trafficked, right? You can be 25, 30 years old. It's just the older you get, the more problematic you get. For number one, you're less desirable to that world of criminal. And when you're younger, you're more easily to be handled, more easily to be manipulated, and to just be handled in general. So traffickers can be business professionals, family members, organized crimes. And when I say business professionals, they could be doctors, they could be attorneys, they can be law enforcement, they can be anything. It doesn't matter who you are. It can happen. We had we'll call it a sting up near the Youngstown area a year or two ago, where we had a police show up to meet a young girl. We had a doctor and 2 teachers all in the same night. So it has no boundaries at all. Does anyone have any questions while we're trying to get this video to play real quick? I know we're kind of going quickly, but.
You said that you can report a cyber tip. Where do you go to do that?
So at the very end, we'll give that information out. Okay. There's actually several different ways of doing it. Okay. What I would say, no matter what it is that you want to report, if it's something that has to do with this world of trafficking, sex trafficking, anything, is just to call your local police department or your township or whoever. And the reason being is it's not that, obviously not that we're interested, or these, like the federal agencies aren't interested in it. It's just that these people are boots on the ground, right? They can be there within a couple minutes, maybe secure the scene, hold people there, and then make other additional phone calls for people to come in that kind of are experts in this field, and they can kind of take over. So you can never be wrong with just contacting your local department, and they all know what to do from there.
Chad, question.
Yeah.
When I first started my career, I noticed that a lot of the peer-to-peer programs where we're identifying child pornography, those tips typically came from law enforcement actively working the P2P sites. And now I'm seeing more of a progression that the referrals, those cyber tips are coming from companies, organizations like Google or Apple or Facebook. So what are the trends you're seeing in terms of who is reporting or making those sites?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And I think the reason why that trend is happening more now than ever before was a lot of these social media sites like Google, Facebook, and stuff like that, they're the vessel that a lot of this stuff is being transferred on. So they need to be proactive on their side to say, hey, or even like Charter Communication, Spectrum, AT&T, we get a lot of stuff from them too because they're the internet people, right? So when they see this stuff or anything that they see that's identified, they want to say, hey, I reported you, I'm good. So a lot of times that's the trend now, which is good, even though they're doing it to protect themselves, it's getting reported. Yeah.
And is that where the majority of the tips are coming from?
I wouldn't say a majority. We still, with our machines, we still, so the machine that we have, it runs 24/7. It never stops, it never gets turned off. And it will spit out more data than you can ever look at. And unfortunately, there's other programs that we can use where it actually shows a map of your community or your state. And it'll actually show on these maps transfer files and data that's being transferred from person to person, peer to peer. And it'll give you a file size of how much is being transferred. Again, I'm not real techie, but it goes from a little bit to a whole lot. And unfortunately, we are so short in manpower across the state and really the country that we really just focus on the bigger fish. And while these other ones, they don't get overlooked, but they just don't get the attention that they should. And, it's unfortunate, but this should play, right? Okay. Okay. Well, it may not play. Any other questions before we move on real quick? No?
Are these people generally dangerous? I mean, like, you have that shield, are these people over usually?
Typically, no. Those type of people. And they kind of fit a profile for the most part. But when we do a organized takedown or a scheduled takedown with our special response team, they're pretty much go or no go. If they're going to have their shields, their rifles, their helmets on. They're going to have the whole 9 yards. So as it may not be a direct threat to the community or people nearby, they're prepared for it. And it's always better to be more prepared than underprepared, right? Especially when it comes to that. So at times it can look a little like, well, that might be a little much, but in the grand scheme of things, that's just how we do it. That way we're always ready. So, but they, statistically though, if you look at the people that are doing this, these predators, they are introverts. They're not really out in the, I'm not going to say it's not a blanket statement, but just the ones that I've worked personally, a lot of them work from home. A lot of them don't leave their house a whole lot. A lot of them are single. Not all of them. Some of them are married. We've had cases with married people that are have successful careers and children, and we just had one not too long ago. So there's not one mold for everybody, but sometimes you can kind of see some similarities between the predators. And then the methodologies on how we investigate things. We have an excellent intelligence unit. I was thankful I was part of that for a couple years before I came back into investigations. These are probably some of the smartest folks I know, and they do a great job. You can send them a name and maybe a date of birth, and they can tell you where you got your first job at Dairy Queen. I mean, they can go through the whole thing and kick out any information that you may need. So they'll create and prepare target profiles. And basically, that's just a name and a photo, and it's going to give you everything about that person that we need to know. And a lot of it has to do with like their criminal history or their tendencies for violence. There's our computer crimes unit, again, some really sharp folks that are in this unit. Those are guys that we can take a whole computer to, and they can extract data from it through legal process if we get a warrant or a subpoena. They'll do cell phones, they'll do tablets. Even if we can give them like an SD card, they can break that thing down. What they can do is really great. And then, obviously, in this world, we try to be a victim-centered investigation, right? So let's just say someone is being extorted sexually for 5 years. She's made thousands upon thousands of dollars. She's a drug addict and an alcoholic. And there could have been times where she could have walked away. That's the big question. Why don't these people just find an opportunity when the guy goes down the hallway at a hotel to get a bottle of pop and leaves the door? Why don't they just walk out? It's a little bit more complicated than that, okay? They're fearful, they've been groomed, they've been manipulated to stay there. And they feel like this person who is selling them for sex is their friend and that they're taking care of them. So the victim-centered approach to it is, even though, yeah, they're breaking the law, they're doing drugs, they're doing things illegally, but we have to understand as law enforcement and just everyone that they are victims in this, and that given the right opportunity, they can change their lives around. But we've got to get to that point. We have to find them first, right? So just a couple more statutes here. There's a couple ORCs that relate to these crimes. Some are felonies, most are felonies. Community support groups. Every community has one. I don't care where you are in Ohio or even in the country. There's going to be a support group nearby. It's either going to be funded through your community, through churches, through your county. There's always going to be those support groups there. And then task force. More now than ever has this grown to the point where we are today. And we have specialized people working solely on these types of crimes. Probably if you take away five years, probably half the number of people that are assigned to work these cases. So that's really good. And then training, there's for education, teach investigators on how to interview. These victims that we find, you kind of have to approach them a little bit differently than you would just a regular interview of some unrelated crime, okay? These people have been battered, they've been assaulted, they've been raped, they've been abused. Could be for a week, it could be for 10 years, right? So they've been tailored and manipulated to law enforcement are bad people, okay? And if you're told something long enough, you're going to start believing it, right? So when they see us come into the room and sit down and try to interview them, they're probably not going to want to talk. So there's the training and the education for investigators on how to deal with these situations and these investigations is paramount, because it's not a blanket way of doing it. You've got to, does that make sense? Because they've been through so much trauma that you really have to, and there's people, females may only want to talk to another female because of what men have done to her for years. Or it could be opposite, there could be, and girls aren't the only ones that are being trafficked, right? I think when we think about human trafficking, juvenile trafficking, we always think about like young girls, teenage girls and stuff like that. It's not always girls. The trend is more girls, for sure, but there's boys too, because there's that audience out there that would, even women too. Women will pay for sex with a young boy, but so will men. So you really have to be specialized and know how to talk to these people, because it's not the same. So I guess we kind of talked about that. So the overview, we define what human trafficking is. Labor trafficking and sex trafficking is different. And I know our next presenter will go into that a little bit more from the federal side. But it's related, but it's different. Investigation methodologies, it's, how we approach these investigations. It's certainly different than anything else. Jurisdictional concerns, and that's why we work with partnerships, task force. We as an agency, as a Highway Patrol, at times I kind of consider ourselves kind of the safety net below all the other agencies out there. If something comes in at one agency, it may get passed to another agency because of manpower or because of shortness of resources, but eventually it'll get down to this big safety net at the bottom, which is the Highway Patrol. Obviously our budget, since we're statewide, we can support more resources, and the partnerships is paramount, because I may get something that's on private property, so I'll have to get with the local jurisdiction for them to help. So we really work well together to get it done. Okay. This is another video, and I hope this does play. It's not that long. I think we're 0 for 2 tonight. It did play earlier though. There we go.
Every day in our state and all across the nation, a terrible and heartbreaking crime is being committed. Vulnerable young people are thrown, drawn, and coerced into a cycle of abuse, terror, and endless sexual degradation. The specter of human trafficking is all too real and is nothing short of a modern slavery of the most vile kind. Traffickers seek out the hurting, lonely, and abused.
Anybody I've ever trusted in my life has hurt me, including my mother, my father, that guy that was creeping in my bedroom when I was 4. Like, all these people who I trusted with my life have hurt me.
When I was being trafficked, I had no idea that's what was happening to me. I actually blamed it all on myself. I put myself in this situation. I'm just this terrible person, drug addict, mom, and I deserve this stuff. And that, I didn't know, is what the traffickers want and try to make us believe, because then they have control. Then they have like the psychological control over us.
Really, essentially, a lot of this is, they're a very vulnerable population. The runaways, the missings that are in our towns, our cities, out on the streets. And these pimps and traffickers, they target them. And so they're already vulnerable to begin with. Maybe have a history of sexual abuse, maybe don't have very good parents, don't have anybody that cares for them, and they have nowhere to go. It's not like the movie Taken, where a van pulls up and you're kidnapped. It's a slow process, a slow recruitment process. But these guys are specifically targeting this vulnerable population.
It was dark. It was really dark. I believe the world is dark. The women believe the world is dark.
Judge Paul Herbert sits on the Franklin County Municipal Court.
96% of all juvenile prostitutes are runaways, and they're running away from something. People think human trafficking is all the way over here. We have this real small population, maybe not even in Ohio, of these foreign-born girls that are kidnapped, drugged up, and sold for sex. And we've got this other dichotomous relationship with this prostitute who, like the movie Pretty Woman, is engaged in this voluntarily. It's something that she chooses, and that's not true at all. We developed a human trafficking assessment tool. We got some help from the Polaris Project out of Washington, D.C., which is a think tank. We pieced together some of their information. We started giving every woman charged with prostitution this human trafficking assessment tool. And the numbers are staggering when you compare that to the law. We found that over 92% of every woman arrested for prostitution actually falls within the definition of being a human trafficking victim.
The Ohio State University's Moritz College of Law is developing strategies to help trafficking victims.
People have had sort of a mind shift to say, we shouldn't be criminalizing these women. We should be going after the people who are purchasing, and we should be going after the people who are overall making the profits and doing the selling. And so now that we are thinking about it in that way, we can look at the women who are the ones that we see and offer them supportive services in order to help them out of that type of life and help empower them to make choices for their lives that are going to be more positive. Most of our caseload is older teenagers, 16, 17, but we have clients as young as 13. There is a human trafficking task force in Columbus that is excellent and is really devoted to helping victims rather than criminalizing them and punishing them.
The number one thing that our task force we always try to work victim-centered cases. So what that essentially means is that everything is for the victim. If we just do a sting and we get the victim out and we attach them to services through our victim advocate, to us that's a success. Would we like to have a backside criminal investigation to that? Absolutely. But our number one goal is to get the victim out of the situation, try to get them the things that they have not had.
And then once we are able to identify them as a potential victim of human trafficking, they are eligible for what's called safe harbor under Ohio law. It's a new law that was passed a couple of years ago to allow victims to obtain supportive services rather than being punished and criminalized in the juvenile court system.
These new partnerships and strategies are designed to give victims the tools to rebuild their own lives.
They want to do well. They want to get out of this lifestyle. They can't stand it. They do more on probation than they're asked to do. A lot of our women are in college. They're being reunited with their families. They are getting jobs, they're going to school, paying taxes. They volunteer throughout the community. They go into women's prisons to conduct meetings and tell them about human trafficking.
I didn't go through that and get where I'm at today to not help someone else go through that. There's no way that I'm sitting here today knowing what I know, gone through what I've gone through, and to not reach back and help someone else. So any chance that I can, if they want to listen, they want help, I'm down.
I love to see the kids be able to think positive things about themselves again.
That's what justice ought to be about.
Just to see someone go from the dark to the light, there's nothing more fulfilling than that.
So there's this specific hotline number right there. Although you don't necessarily need it. 911, we all know that number. You can start there and eventually you'll get to the people that you need out there. And don't ever worry about crying wolf, okay? If you see something that doesn't look right, if you guys are seated in here tonight and you guys are all smart enough to realize if something doesn't feel right or something doesn't look right, you always hear that, report something that doesn't look right, do it. You're not going to ever get in trouble by calling in something that's, if you truly feel, in your gut that something's not right, we'll look at it and then we'll determine whether something's going on or not, but you'll never, don't ever feel ashamed of doing it. Any questions for me? That's about all I have. These are just the other numbers here, the non-emergency hotline number. Yes?
I watched Facebook, and on Facebook, they show little kids that and if a kid has his hand to the side, moving his fingers or his back, that means trouble. Is that true?
To give you the answer, I don't know specifically. I don't know of any specific training unless that they're training these children at a very young age to do that. My kids are beyond that age at this time. I don't know if that's what they're teaching. But again, I would say that if you had a gut feeling that something didn't look right, then I would definitely say something to somebody. Yeah, but specifically to that, I don't know. Unless, I don't know, do you know of anything like that? Yeah.
There are a lot of different things, the community, Facebook, social media is horrible, right? There are very bad things about social media, but there's really good things about social media. And a lot about it is awareness. And the main thing that we want to stress to people, if something doesn't feel right, if you see it and you think that looks like, that doesn't sit right with me, watch it for a second safely. Obviously, we want everybody to be safe, but you have your phone, take a picture, take a video, try to be discreet. If something isn't feeling right, and then call somebody. That's the biggest thing with these with human trafficking, like he had mentioned in a video, has everybody seen the movie Taken? I mean, it's an amazing movie. Is that happening right here in this county? Maybe not. But what about prostitution? Is that happening? It is. Are there children right now being exploited online? Yes, it is. It's an unfortunate truth, but human trafficking is it's spread through every community. It's not the large cities, it's the smaller communities. It's where those vulnerable victims are. And that's why it's so important. We, as law enforcement, have shifted to this victim-centered approach because we understand and we recognize that these victims they could potentially turn into suspects themselves. This is their life. This is what they know. If they get exploited as a child and they are brought up into a life, unfortunately, in certain situations, children are born and they don't have the normal nurturing life that they should. They are born to be put into work. And the parents or the guardians are going to get paid by whatever they can either sell this child for. It's heartbreaking, it's gut-wrenching, and that's not what we were made for. And it happens in communities everywhere. People who sell their children for money, for drug abuse it's always that root cause. Drug abuse is, every case that I investigated, that I worked on, there's a link to drugs, to that. So when you have that connection and you have children that are being exploited, why we look at the victim-centered approach, they may not know anything different, and they may grow up to do the same thing that happened to them as children. So we recognize that there is a whole psychological trauma behind what this crime has done to them and what it can do going forward. So when we do these operations and these things and we're looking for these suspects, we're also bringing in community resources, therapists, counselors. We're trying to provide these victims with support to help them step out of this life. It is very difficult and it's scary and it's alarming. This is all they know. I can still tell you just about every case that I ever worked on in the eyes of a 12-year-old child who she had no idea why we were at her house. She thought that this was just the way her life was supposed to be. And it killed me. I mean, it killed every ounce of me to see her face and to see the darkness that was in her eyes. This was just her life. This is what she was supposed to do. And to try to talk to her and build up a relationship to make her understand that this is not where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. And I've had the distinct privilege of working with Judge Herbert. I know that's a dated video, but I got to see his courtroom and I got to see what he did for the victims that came in and seeing the support group. And it takes an army of people. It's not just law enforcement being aware. It's the community being aware, the support services that come. This is hard for these victims to step out. They need support. They need support from us to see them as people, to see them whole, and to investigate their crimes and to treat them as that, and then to make sure that they're getting sent to the resources. Every budget in every county is tight. We know that. And that's why we partner with a lot of community resources, churches, battered women's shelters, and different community centers that bring people in and they provide them that therapy and that safeness. They need a home. And a lot of times these victims, that's why they stay, especially in prostitution situations. That is their life. They control their money, they control their home, wherever they're staying at, and they control who and when they're allowed to be around, their cell phone, their clothing, the basic human needs. These traffickers, they control. So that's why we stress to the community, if something is not right, if you see someone in your community and you're like, I feel that there's something wrong here, and pass it on to law enforcement. And even if you don't see an immediate car pull up, that doesn't mean that we're not working in the background. There's a lot of cases that come in that we filter, some that get to us with the highway patrol, some that don't, but we will absolutely take those calls and we will do everything that we can to investigate those and to get those victims off the streets, get them the services that they need. I didn't mean to interrupt there to jump in.
Nope, well said. Sure.
I work with somebody that his daughter was actually trafficked for about
6 months, and it was her boyfriend that sold her to a group of people. But they took pictures of her family, and so they were able to rescue her, and they did get her back. But he was asking the people he worked with for money because the father was, because she was so terrified that they told her they were going to kill her family if she left, that they needed to put her in a deprogramming program. But at that time, and it's been a couple of years ago, it was like $30,000 to get her in this program. Do they have programs today that you can put people in, or do?
Was it like a drug program, or like a?
It was he said it was to deprogram her because she kept saying she needed to go back because they were going to kill her family. I have to go back. I have to, because like you said, they manipulate her into thinking that if I jump, bad things are going to happen to my family.
Sure.
And she didn't want that, so they had to put her in a program. And so he was asking his co-workers, can you contribute to help me get her in this program? But I don't know, are there programs where once these people are found?
I think there's definitely resources that are available. I don't know, or I'm not familiar with anything that would cost anything like, do you know of anything? It kind of sounds like a scam in itself, maybe. I don't know, but it just sounds like he's asking for a lot of money.
So we've actually removed victims from the vicinity before. I had a 15-year-old that had been sex trafficked, and she really couldn't go back to her family because she said that she didn't want to go home because her cousin had raped her, and she told her mom, and her mom didn't care. So in that case, we also don't necessarily want to arrest these kids or these victims for prostitution, because then that's on their record the rest of their lives. So this 15-year-old actually was charged by a juvenile judge with endangering herself on the internet. So we actually moved her from Detroit all the way up into this part of Michigan to get her out of Detroit. Get her out. While she was up there, was a sex trafficking victim home. She finished her GED. I kept contacting her to make sure she was okay. I would tell her to report things and everything like that. But sometimes you just have to remove the person from the territory where she could, she's in Detroit, she can just run back out again. In fact, I caught her twice because, like I said, we sent her home, and I found her on Backpage again a little bit later, and it's like, okay, this isn't working. What can we do next? I mean, I'm not saying there's not, programs like, this deprogramming or anything, but, you've got to figure out why this happened. And I don't know if locking up the people who exploited her would help relieve her mind of all of that, but I said for every story out there, it's just trying to figure out what to do best and how to approach that particular problem, because all these victims are different.
So you may want to Google that before you give any money, is what I would suggest. I don't know anything specific or anything like that, but it kind of sounds a little odd. Because most resources are I'm not going to say they're all free, but usually free through, the community or the county or the state. So.
Now, there could also be very in-depth inpatient mental health facilities that target that complex trauma, which could be something that they've decided that are privately run, that yes, you would have to pay for that. There's a lot of those facilities throughout the U.S., but again, they're usually the mental health kind of component where they're looking at the trauma.
Yes, sir.
Your slide mentioned labor.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, she'll get into that a little bit more.
A little bit on that one. The two major types of trafficking is sex trafficking and labor trafficking. I mean, there could be other things around, but labor trafficking is more your migrant workers, your massage parlors, but that costs you labor and sex trafficking. You'll see articles in the paper where a family has kept somebody in their home just to cook and clean and take care of their kids because they hold their documents. So there is both. But it's harder to find labor trafficking just because it's so hidden. And a lot of times there's also the language barriers. I mean, if they're bringing them over from Vietnam or they're bringing them over from different parts, bringing them in and up from Mexico, I mean, they can't communicate with anybody on the outside. How are we ever going to find who they are? So labor trafficking, I mean, but I can't say one compared to the other, but I definitely worked the sex trafficking for most of my career. And the labor trafficking, we would get Homeland Security investigations, or HSI, because they would take those more, because again, they're more the Homeland Security, ICDP. So they're more the, the papers and are they here, and why are they here? So.
I got thing in Washington, I don't want it.
Well, I'll give you an example of a case that I specifically worked 2 years ago at the Ohio State Fair. And it was an individual from Mexico who had crossed the border illegally. And there is a large concession company based out of Florida who will send vans to the Mexico border and basically will offer anybody that comes across that line a job. So these people immediately hop in the van, and now they're mixed in with the carnies. And they go from state to state to state all year long, right? Because all those fairs do is they just travel. And when the weather gets bad in the north, they go south, they go to Puerto Rico. It's nonstop. We had one individual that worked a barbecue trailer. Now, if you go to the Ohio State Fair, a lot of the concession stands are owned by the same people. They may be different colors or different themes, but there's only a couple of companies that own these concession stands. This guy basically got fed up, the guy from Mexico got fed up with the fact that the concession owner was charging him $60 for a red, cheap, thin polo shirt that said their company's name on it, something barbecue. And they're like, well, you need 3 of those shirts. So you're already in the hole this much money. And I'm going to give you a place to stay in my trailer. It's not an apartment. It's literally a dirty mattress in the back of a box trailer with a generator outside with a box fan running to it. I'm charging you $120 a night. And this fair is 12 days long. So now you're in the hole, $1,400, $1,500. You don't have any money. You have no cash. You came across the border with nothing. You need to eat. I'll feed you 3 meals a day, but those are $12 a meal. So now you owe me $2,000. And as soon as you cross that border and before you get in that van, I want your paperwork, I want your documents, I want everything that identifies you as a human being. And that person will hold all your documents and will never give them back to you, because without those documents, you're nobody, especially if you're illegal from Mexico. So how this all came out was he lost the key to the trailer. And he went to his boss and said, hey man, I lost my key, I need a new key to get in. Well, that key's $250. And he had a whole key ring up, but he was just going to charge him $250. He had never intended on paying this kid. So he was like, all right, fine. He got the key and he took a break from flipping burgers. And he went and talked to a guy, because you guys been to the state fair? We do the security there, the uniformed troopers. Went to a trooper and kind of gave him a quick rundown of what was going on, and then he brought him back to our trailer. And that is a very simple explanation on how quickly somebody can become in debt, because they're so vulnerable, they have nothing but the clothes on their back. When they cross that border, they're willing to do anything initially, until they see an opportunity to escape, and this kid did. So, I'm sorry?
Mostly illegals.
I would say that's probably the trend, because they're more easily handled. If you don't speak English and you have no money, no vehicle, and no place to stay. Now, there's Americans that are in the same boat, but if you go down to the border, you can probably fill a van pretty quick, I would imagine. So that's just kind of an example on the labor part, opposed to selling someone for sex. So Well, I've gone way over on my time. Anybody have any other questions?
Hi all, I'm Sandra Berchtold, former FBI agent, or retired should I say. Did 21 years with them. Majority of the time was working what we call violent crimes against children and child sex trafficking. Started up in Detroit. I ran a task force of 15 task force officers, 5 agents. We were one of the #1 task forces in the country because sex trafficking usually comes from destitute and poor neighborhoods, because sometimes that's the only way they can make money. Went from there to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Alexandria, Virginia, where I was their subject matter expert for child sex trafficking in the nation. I communicated with all of our task forces across the country. We had one in at least all of our divisions, so Cincinnati Division, Columbus Division, Detroit Division, or sorry, Cincinnati, Cleveland. And I knew, and I was, if a child would run and they had like certain signs of child sex trafficking, I would call out to our offices saying, hey, this girl's in your neighborhood. Sometimes we could even find an ad on the internet about them and get them out there so we can get them recovered very quickly. From there, I went to Rochester, New York, to where my agents down in Corning, New York, were working these cases. And then most recently, here in Columbus, we worked these cases here right before I retired. And I'm right now a contractor back to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If you don't know who they are, if you've ever gone into a Walmart and as you're checking out and you see the posters of the kids on the wall, NCMEC is generating those posters, and those are the current runaways. You'll even see them sometimes on gas pumps, and they play this song called Runaway Train. Those are missing kids in the area. They've geolocated those posters to who could be missing within like 100 miles of that particular gas pump. So we do overlap here a little bit. So I'm going to be talking more about the federal level of sex trafficking. Again, sex trafficking is human trafficking, also called modern day slavery. And it is force, fraud, and coercion. However, any commercial sex trafficking activity in which there's a minor doesn't even need force, fraud, or coercion. If there's a guy who's putting out a 15-year-old girl and making money off of her, it doesn't have to be force, fraud, or coercion. He is already a subject for sex trafficking. That's why we protect the minors like that. And in recruiting, if you're going to go after the kids, you're probably going to be using Reddit, Snapchat, Discord, Sniffer, and Grindr. If they're going after the adults, which in running into the child sex trafficking victims, there were always usually a few adults around as well. We will charge both sides of that, both the adults and the kids. If they're recruiting the adults, it's more like the dating sites. You know, they get enthralled with a guy or something like that, and the guy will turn around and, oh, I'm running short on money. This guy said he'd pay me $100 if he could have sex with you. And then that turns into trafficking as well. So it can be, I said, adults and kids. Commercial sex websites. They advertise online. Back in the day, it was Craigslist and things along that lines. Probably the biggest one that had been out there in history is Backpage, which was taken down in 2016, I believe. But I've worked on Skip the Games. I've worked to get those ads. Mega Personals. There was Eros. There was, I mean, you could just open these things up, and they were selling women. And they're still selling online as well. However, they're also selling on Facebook. Those apps like the Sell Things Now, where I forget the name of it, but it's the one where the guy was like jumping out of a plane trying to sell his kegerator. You know, it was, we'd gotten tips at NCMEC that some of those were selling child victims as well. So wherever you can sell something, somebody may try to sell a child. Misconceptions and myths of sex trafficking. Only women and girls can be victims and survivors. Now, during one of our Operation Cross Countries in Detroit, we did recover a boy. He was a trans boy, but we did bring him in, and that's the first time I'd ever seen that. But it's not just the girls, it is the boys. There is a big need for that out there, I guess. I hate to call it need, but there is a big demand, let me put it that way. Sex trafficking can only happen in illegal underground industries. No. I mean, it's on the internet. They're buying and selling the kids, they're buying and selling sex. Traffickers targeted victims, they don't know. I know you've all probably heard about the things, you see it on Facebook. I was in a Target parking lot and I felt somebody was following me around. I understand people are very uneasy, but I have yet to run into a trafficking victim that was obtained that way. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it doesn't happen as much as Facebook says it happens. I think it's there to get the drama up. And I said, do be careful, but also with the online and internet out right now, it's so much easier to pick somebody off the internet than it is to pick somebody out of a parking lot. People being trafficked are physically unable to leave their situations, locked? No. I have yet to have gone into a hotel room to get a child out and then say, oh my God, you're here, thank you. They curse us, we're police officers. They're, in some cases, the trafficker is treating them better than they're treated at home. And they lie to us, they do all of this stuff trying to either go back or get out of what they've been in. But again, I've yet to find somebody who's like, thank you. Now, after the one girl that I sent up here in Michigan, last time she said in front of the judge, the judge asked her what she wanted to do. She's like, I want to be an FBI agent like her. You do have to deprogram them somewhat. No, you need to be there to support them and show them there's a better life out there than what they were just going through. Sex trafficking involves moving, traveling, or transporting them. No, not necessarily. In the federal system, it just has to have a federal component. Now, if the guy who took the pictures of the 16-year-old and then put them on the internet has a camera that wasn't made in the United States, that can be linked to federal sex trafficking because what produced the images to be sold. We've done that too, to where we've had to have a Sony representative come in and say, was this camera made in the United States? No. I'm like, okay, then we can use it that way. Let's see. If the trafficked person consented to their initial situation, it can't be human trafficking. Again, no, sometimes they're just duped into it. They get these young kids in, and I've found journals where the 14, 15, 16-year-old are writing in their journals and putting hearts over their traffickers' names, and that this trafficker loves them, or reading the text messages going, oh baby, I almost got my quota today. We can get your tints for your car now. And it's all of that where he has 5 or 6 of these people, girls out there he's juggling just to get that money, and that they have a quota, which a lot of times if they didn't make the quota, they could be on the other end of a pretty good beating, or food withheld, or the keys are locked in their hotel rooms or things like that. And it's a victimless crime. No. These children, these adults who are being trafficked, they're the victims. The effects of all of this is if the victims don't identify as victims. Again, nobody said, thank you for rescuing me today. It's something you have to work through. Service providers don't recognize it in situations where they could act. Again, they don't recognize, hey, I could just walk out the door. We pulled a girl out of a hotel room, red roof, in one of the northern burbs of Detroit, and in talking to her, she's like, I need to go back and do this. I can make more in one night than my mother can make at Walmart all week. We're gonna lose our home. You run into things like that. Widespread victim blaming. In one case, we had a federal judge in court on the record say that the 2 15-year-old girls who was being exploited by a CASA attorney, they were more sophisticated than he was, so she barely gave this guy the sentence he deserved. We had it on record. 2 15-year-olds, more sophisticated than an attorney. Delays in investigations, loss of evidence. these cases do not move quickly, and some of these victims, if you release them, you're never going to find them again. So if you're going to court and you don't have a victim to testify against the trafficker, sometimes the case goes nowhere. Then judges and juries side with the perpetrators. You know, I just heard something on the news recently. Well, she was 15 years old. It wasn't like she was 8 years old. In the federal system, if you're not 18, you are a juvenile, you are a victim. And yes, do they look older than they are? Yes. We had a girl in a case, the trafficker exploited her like at 17 years and 10 months. He took child exploitation pictures, he put her out on Backpage, he sold her, and the defense attorney was like, well, she was almost 18. And our prosecutor was like, no, she was not 18. I don't care if she was almost, the law says 18. You know, you go to Kings Island, you have to be this high to ride the ride. She was not that high. She can't buy cigarettes, she can't buy alcohol, she can't be trafficked. And he's still in prison, I don't think he's getting out until 2033. And then lawmakers make laws that complicate investigations, and then perpetrators get no punishment. Again, if you can't find the victim, sometimes it's very hard to get justice. The human trafficking law, again, you've got the action, which is recruiting, harboring, and all that. The top line is the adults, the bottom line is the juvenile victim. The juvenile version, you don't have to have that force, fraud, or coercion. That's what makes it a little, I don't want to say easier, but at least like I said, if you can prove that person was a child or under the age of 18, you get a bigger hammer. And then the other thing, I'll talk about the task forces. We love our task forces. In fact, these days now I'm doing background investigations for task force officers for our task forces. When I was up in Detroit, my Michigan State Trooper was my most powerful person that I had. Is I can't go out and pull over a car, but I could say, hey, Cuba, stop that car for me, please. And he could pull him over, and then, and so I had more task force officers and agents. But what on the other side is jurisdiction. If in the state of Ohio, somebody takes pictures of an underage, exploitation pictures of an underage person, I'm not sure what the sentence is in the state of Ohio and in some other states, but in the federal system, we have a 15-year mandatory minimum for anybody who does that on the federal system. So a lot of times, if there's somebody that's been charged multiple times on maybe the state level and they haven't been getting very much, sometimes the state levels and the locals will walk it into us and say, do something with this, and then we can get them locked up for a longer period of time. Sex trafficking examples. Before I left the state of Michigan, they were really ramping up the Michigan state trafficking laws. Renting a hotel room for runaways who are engaged in commercial sex, transporting a person. Michigan had actually said anybody who knowingly or sometimes unknowingly transports let's say a victim to a hotel to meet with a John or on the other end, he can be charged. The driver can. Let's see, telling a person they'll call the police to report their warrant. Again, this could go on either side of the labor trafficking or sex trafficking. We were investigating a police officer who was stopping the sex workers in his area, find drugs on him, and said, well, I won't report the drugs if you have sex with me. That's threatening to kill themselves or another person if the person does engage in commercial sex. That's just what you said, is they do threaten the family, or they threaten to tell the family what is going on. Sometimes it's the embarrassment. We see a lot of this in sextortion cases where these kids are now killing themselves instead of wanting their parents to find out that these exploitation pictures, they're pictures that they've sent to somebody that they thought were 12, 13, they're killing themselves instead of wanting their families to find out. And then anybody paying for sex for anyone under 18 years old. We would do these things and you'd be amazed. We had car dealerships. The best part we'd do is we then seize their vehicles. They'd have to pay for them to get back and everything like that. But we've often said is there's not one occupation out there that we've not seen be involved in the child exploitation cases with the child sexual abuse material or sex trafficking. I still wish To Catch a Predator was still out there. I loved that show. I know there was a lot of problems with the entrapment and everything like that, but it shows it's out there. My parents live over in West Jeff. When I was working this stuff, oh, it doesn't happen around here. Then they hit the truck stop. It happens. It's everywhere. Do not imagine it's not here. And then the one good thing about recently, more on the federal system, when they say force, fraud, and coercion on the adults, they're now looking at coercion as keeping somebody addicted, providing the drugs, making the money off of them, and then just keeping them in that horrible cycle like that. The other thing is we've actually seen a few years ago a move from selling drugs to selling people, because once you sell a drug, you have to go get more drugs. When you have a person, you can sell that person over and over and over again and not have to obtain another one. Minor victim red flags. We had this, when I was working with NCMEC, chronic truant, homeless, runaway youth. If you see somebody they would often the traffickers would tell the girls, hey, I'll get your nails done, you can get your hair done, we'll get you some nice clothes, we'll get you some great shoes, but that's only because he's making money off of them. We had a Michigan trooper stop a car one day, and I got a call because when they were doing the search of the car, they looked in the purse and there was a stack of hotel keys, probably about an inch thick, those digital keys, and you can walk away with them, and that's very indicative of trafficking. There's signs of brandings, tattoos, scars, and piercings. Some of the traffickers will brand these girls. My task force went to work the Indianapolis Super Bowl. You'll see a name like the word daddy tattooed on somebody, or a crown, or there's all of these symbols that are barcodes. You'll even see barcodes on some of the trafficking victims. If they're approached, they're more likely gonna tell them a false name, a false age. My 15-year-old that I sent to Upper Michigan, she lied to us about her identity, I think 6 times that evening. When we finally figured out who she was, she had a warrant on her, so that's why she did it, but she wasn't about ready to tell us who she was. But we can't let them go until we can prove who they are. Inconsistencies in stories. Sometimes when a car of individuals are pulled over, they'll separate everybody and then ask everyone what's happening, and that's what happened to my 15-year-old. They were on their way down to Louisville, Kentucky. The pimp said they were just going to dance. The other girls said, oh no, we were going down to be put on the back page. And then the other one's like, no, I'm just going to dance. So you have 4 different, 4 stories, and that's how we figured out that Joe was trafficking Diamond and Sky. And then they may not answer you at all. Maybe they'll just not even, oh, I'm just here, yeah, I'm with them. Something's just not right. Who is this girl? Oh, she's my cousin. Well, and then, like I said, ask the girl, oh, yeah, just very demure because of the traffickers there. And any unusual child behavior, say the child may be checking themselves into the hospital, maybe because they're hurt, or maybe they're looking for help. A lot the same on the adult victim red flags. Multiple identities, lack of knowledge where they are. There's a controlling person staring them down. The person with them carries large amounts of cash. Western Union receipts. Visa gift cards, Visa Vanilla gift cards were very big back in Detroit when I was there. You just find a stack of them like, an inch thick. They have starting to go to cryptocurrency and things like that, which is making it harder for us to follow the money, but we are working on that. And then these are just some cases that we've worked up in Detroit. Dinero Armani was his pimp name. He was an old school pimp. He had a YouTube program, Dinero's Players Show. He had 2 juveniles, numerous adults. He produced child sexual exploitation material. Even while he was being held in a local jail, he was holding a phone sex raffle for all the jail inmates, that his bottom girl, or the girl that was loyal to him, would then do phone sex over the jail calls, whoever won the money for him in prison. Joe Shelton, that's my girl who I put up here. 1 juvenile, multiple adults. They actually transferred one of his adults to Virginia to his mother's house so they could hide her from me. I found her. Donald Guest was the CASA attorney. He was having sex with his clients. He provided gifts, and he lied to the court on one of the juveniles' behalfs about her actual identity. I mean, and then I was working with a detective from another state. She was working a case. A father was providing his minor daughters to drug dealers, so they provide sex for his drug use. And then FBI used to work something called Operation Cross Country, where they required every division and every task force to go out and work. And I think the 1 year, in 3 days, we recovered 10 or 11 juvenile victims in Detroit in 1 weekend. So we would do it all at the same time, so we would have huge numbers at the end, but it was also just a really good representation of what we ran into. Here's the labor trafficking statute on the federal side. It's for labor services, and then you do have force, and then and it's just how they what you have to prove to get the labor trafficking. Again, I have not worked much labor trafficking. It's more by word of mouth. We have so many people out there that we were targeting the kids. We wanted the kids back, and it's just so much harder to get after the others. And then just, if you want to do one more. And again, this was actually here in September, a growing problem, massage parlors and human trafficking investigations. Again, massage parlors and the happy endings. For the clients, I said that could be sex trafficking, it could be labor trafficking. And then, so we have enough time for some questions. The last thing, the victims. They should be provided with victim services. Again, they distrust law enforcement. The traffickers have a strong psychological hold. They may believe they have nowhere to go. They're isolated. They're ashamed. They believe the situation is better than where they came from. Again, Diamond had been raped by a cousin, and now she was hanging out with the pimps. And the victims are not aware of their legal rights. That's probably the biggest thing on the labor trafficking side is they don't know where to go, and if they don't have their documents, what do they do? And then how to report, again, I echo. I had somebody come up to me at church or in our women's club meeting and asked, we think we saw human trafficking. And I'm like, well, what'd you do? Well, what were we supposed to do? I'm like, they're like, it was like a bed and breakfast type thing. Well, we told the guy at the desk. And I'm like, and then what? She's like, nothing else. I'm like, call 911. You know, when you get on and you're calling a doctor's office, if this is an emergency, call 911, don't leave us a message. Again, they are boots on the ground. They can get there very quickly. If you call Polaris, which is the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which Chad put that number up there, or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, it's 1-800-THE LOST. It has to go to DC. Then it has to be scrubbed. Then they have to figure out where that complaint has to go to. And by the time it gets to the FBI or the State Patrol or the locals, it could be 24 plus hours later, and they're gone. Again, call your local police department first. A lot of the locals are actually taking these type of complaints more seriously because they have been pushing information about human trafficking out pretty much countrywide. So, okay, I'm good, fast talker. Questions?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like, I'm thinking not so much under the age of 18, but like these 18 to 25-year-olds, because you brought up the point about money.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a lot of them fall into this trap? They get home from good homes, but it's about the money.
We did classify a certain group as survival sex. If they are on the streets. Now, here's one that's a little odd. So we had a really weird group of, they were like you would have discussion boards, but this was all about men and women hooking up. So I started going out and finding, and it was all under monikers. So once I found out this one girl's name, I'm like, I found her, sat down, what's going on? Are you being trafficked? No, I'm married. We have 6 kids. I'm like, then why are you doing this? Because I want my kids to have the best of everything. And her husband knew about it. In fact, in Michigan, there was a circuit to where during hunting season, the girls would move north to where the hunters are. The Detroit International Auto Show was one of our biggest weekends because you have men in a city with money, and a lot of times their spouses, girlfriends were not with them. Again, I've worked the Newark Super Bowl, I've worked the Indianapolis Super Bowl, we worked the Detroit Auto Show, we've worked the All-Star Games, we've worked, in fact, the Arnold. There's teams watching the Arnold. Again, it's these big draw, we were walking around a NASCAR track one time. In Corning is the Watkins, there's a road race there. We would be there every year, walking through the campgrounds, just to see if something didn't seem right. Because these are places, and campground, actually regular campgrounds, that's where a lot of familial, where the parents are putting the kids out so they can make money while they're there. So
really it's just everywhere. I mean, pretty much.
So, working this, and I actually went to Charlotte to my niece's first communion. So you get people, oh, what do you do? I tell them, well, that doesn't happen here. Go get my work computer, I open it up, I pull on back. I'm like, where's this hotel? They're like, 2 miles from here. I'm like, it's happening right there. She is there. What? Again, most people just don't go to a website called Backpage because there's nothing to buy there but sex.
When was he saying that? So Backpage, is that like an app?
It was a website. It was a nationwide, and I believe Canadian, it worked in Canada's, but it was pictures, what they offer, how much, where they are. With the phone, that particular one is gone.
But there's others.
There's others. They're using Telegram now, they're using Facebook, they're using anywhere you could possibly. How about Facebook Marketplace? Craigslist. Under casual, what was that one? Was casual encounters or something like that? Or even the dating, looking for. Yeah, you probably read something. We had one, we got the complaint that they were actually discussing, on the face of it, they were discussing puppies, but they were selling people. So.
That's just a lot to take in, and you gotta read through it.
Yes, it is. It is not a lot of people can investigate it either. Especially, you have to have a special, I don't know what it is. There are some people who, I can't work this stuff. I can't, especially when it's the kids, the pictures and everything like that. But it's like, but if I don't do it, who's going to? Again, I have 6 nieces and nephews. Why, somebody's got to do it. And I tricked my nieces and nephews one time to where, just had them all together. I'm like, so, who has social media? How many friends do you have? Who has 100 friends? Hands raise up. Who has 200 friends? Hand raise. I think my one nephew had 700 friends. Okay, they live in London and or West Jeff. I'm like, and you know all of them. You've met all of them face to face. Well, oh yeah. I'm like, no, you haven't, because I'm one of them. No, you're not. I'm like, yes, I am. You just don't know who I am. So one of the 7 accepted a friendship from a fake profile, and the others all let me in. And you're only as safe as your dumbest friend, is what I told the kids. Mm-hmm. But some of these kids would have 5,000 friends, the NCMEC kids that we would be hunting. 5,000 friends. How can you have 5,000 friends? And that's where, again, the parents have to keep an eye on their kids. And the other thing is every app out there. Who has Pinterest? Nobody? I love Pinterest. It's my recipe. You can chat with somebody else on Pinterest, And I caught one of my nieces on there. She had 2 different Pinterest accounts. One which her grandma saw. The other one which I found. And I'm like, you need to go up to her room right now and see what she's up to. She was chatting with some guy she didn't know.
On Pinterest.
Pinterest. Fitness apps, you can do that.
So really it's all these apps anymore.
There are hidden things in a lot of the apps. But I'm not, if I'm chatting, I'm like, hey, what's your recipe for so-and-so? Or what hairstyles or whatever. But, you know, not everything is. Yeah. Other questions? No?
I have a question for the panel. How has the development of AI impacted you guys?
The one thing I can say on the federal side is AI-generated child sexual exploitation material can be charged. So if somebody uses an AI something and produces child pornography with it, they can be charged for child pornography in the federal courts. And just as all that was coming out, and then cryptocurrency, I'm like, I'm out of there. I can't, we're getting into certain technologies. I mean, there's certain things out there going out. There's a whole new threat out there to where it's crimes against children and a counterterrorism threat working side by side. And that was some of the things that I was like, I said, there's younger people out there who understand all of this, and I was coming up. They would force me to retire a year after I retired anyway because of my age. So I was like, out. But I said I contracted NCMEC for, cases they're sending me on. Yeah. And I mean, cops don't stop when they retire, generally. So, but again, AI, what about AI for y'all?
That was going to be the thing. We're not seeing a lot of it yet, but there's going to be that case that we're going to be working on, say, a drug trafficking computer, and we see images, and then we start working that case further. We're going to get there. It's just like with the autonomous vehicles when that came out, the changes that we had to do as law enforcement to adjust to those automatic controls, we're going to see that in just about every other element of crime as they come up.
We just make your job so much harder.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Than it used to be.
It makes parenting harder.
Yeah, it does.
Because you can't be everywhere all at one time.
Right.
And while technology is great, I mean, it gives us a lot of tools that will enable us to do the jobs that we do, but it also allows the criminals to target the children and target the people that they
It's a catch-22 because so my kids grew up in the technology age, and I'm old school like paper pen. So they way outsmart me when it comes to the techie stuff. So like even if they're older now, so I wouldn't come, but back then, like I keep hearing roadblocks. I wouldn't even know how to get in there and dig around without the expertise of somebody that knew computers. So it's like, I can take all the information and look at it, but if I don't know how to do it, at 10 years old, they could figure it out where I could.
Right.
So I'm like,
scary.
That's a hard thing to prevent unless you're up on technology. Maybe the younger parents are better at it because they know the technology, I don't.
Well, no, but the other thing is if, especially with the sextortion cases out there, the kids have to be able to know that they can come to their parents and not be judged. Of course, you're going to be pissed off.
Right.
Well, how could you do this? How could you send a picture like that? But again, they're killing themselves. For the girls, it's usually they're being sextorted for more pictures. But for the boys, they're being sextorted for money. And yes, a number of those do go back to Nigeria. I do know that after I left Detroit, they were able to extradite some people from Nigeria to Michigan to be charged them on this whole monetary exploitation. But that's like it's like almost impossible to extradite from some of those countries. And they probably get maybe a whole total of $1,500 from these kids. These kids are going into their bank accounts, or they're stealing money because they don't want their parents to know. Or they don't want, they'll threaten to send that picture to their friends on Facebook, or their school teachers, or they're this, or they're that. And if the kids aren't aware about this, or if they're too afraid to come forward, again, we've seen too many suicides.
Yeah. So it seems like that most of the opportunity comes from parents being able to monitor your children, because it looks like they're being groomed, they're coerced, they're manipulated.
But
when I think of human trafficking, I think of somebody snatching you and throwing you in the but it doesn't sound like that's the majority of it.
I mean, it could be, there were kids recruiting other kids for a pimp. It's, well, again, do you want to have the tennis shoe, you want to have the clothes to look good. It's peer pressure too. What is society's, or actually their peers, if they're being made fun of, if they're being put down, if they're doing, and they see somebody who's talking them up. Again, they look for the most vulnerable. And here's somebody paying attention to me. And then it said the monitoring of the apps and everything. That's a hard thing to do. There are certain companies out there I've heard of, because we've had parents actually bring us, they mirror the chats. Somehow these companies, they put this on the kids' phones. We've had actual discussions handed to us in printouts of somebody talking to their kid. It's I think a watchdog or something like that. There were a couple of them out there like that. But how many of the new apps actually can use that? The apps are changing every day. I mean, Facebook was great for me, but that's not what the kids are using.
I will add this. So reluctantly, I gave in and got my son, who was 10, a phone for selfish purposes. If I wanted to call him, I would have a way to contact him. At the time, I did download an app that would send every message to me first. Then I would have to approve it. Then it would go to its destination. He was 10, and it was mind-numbing. I couldn't delete it quick enough. What 10-year-olds talk about is ridiculous, and I'm like, no more. But those services are available. But I think just having an open dialogue with your kids on a regular basis can probably pretty much prevent any of that. And then furthermore, with the apps, I know everybody's got a nice new car now that's got the infotainment system with the touch screen, and you can hook your phone up either through Apple CarPlay or Bluetooth. That's called an ECM, electronic control module. When a lot of these traffickers will rent vehicles, and they won't operate their own cars.
Mm-hmm.
So what do they first do? Because they want to play their music, they connect it to the car so they can do Bluetooth, so they can play their music in the rental car. It will ask you when you do that, even if you buy a brand new car, a used car, a rental car, whatever, do you want to sync your contacts to the car? Okay? If you say yes, it'll sync. So if somebody calls you, the name will come across there, all the info. Your car has your phone's data. Okay? If you say no, your car still has that data. I don't know why they even give you the option, because the no feature doesn't work. So just know, if you take anything away tonight, don't connect your phone to your car, because it will have everything on it. Now, for under $10, you can get on Amazon, and it's a little block that you can plug into your USB that's in your car. Plug your power cord into that block.
When it blocks it.
There's 4 prongs in the USB. It cuts off 2 of them, which is the data. The 2 outside is the power. So it's a dummy, basically. It's only allowing the power to get through. It's less than $10, and it's good. But a lot of times when we come into account of these guys that have these rental cars, we can get a lot of information from these infotainment centers even though they say don't sync the phone in the car.
Wow.
So it's just another tool to use and something to think about.
Is it, we good? Anything?
Questions? Well, thank you again for having us. We appreciate it. If there's something else that you would like to hear or something that we could do different that would be beneficial for the community, we're always, any law enforcement officer I think would be happy to come talk to the community. It's not often we get venues like this that we can do that and to have open dialogue. So if you have anything, suggestions that would be helpful for you, let us know. So thank you again.
Thanks.
About a lot to learn, and we sure appreciate you folks being here tonight. So it's a lot, again, a lot to take in, and a lot of work to do. So, thank you for coming.